Yeah. In the words of Ecclesiastes, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for dancing and a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking and a time for losing. We gather this afternoon at a time for losing. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming to bid farewell to Judith Gould Newberger. And thank you for welcoming me into this holy and very sad moment. I'm Rabbi Rick Brody, the Baskin Jewish Community Chaplain at Jewish Family Service of Colorado. It's an honor to be here today to guide Judy's mourners and all of us gathered through this difficult time, to conduct a ceremony of sacred recollection and joyful remembrance, and to bestow a final act of kindness upon Judy with a proper burial, which we will do following this ceremony at the cemetery. Judy was born Judith Gould in Detroit, Michigan on January 3rd, 1950, the 14th of Tevet, 5710 on the Hebrew calendar, the youngest child of Arthur and Irene Gould. Her Hebrew name was Yehudit bat Avraham va'Ida. Judy entered the family following her brother Murray, who was 15 years old when she was born, and her sister Anita, who was 4. Judy's parents and both her siblings preceded her in death. Judy died peacefully last Friday morning, October 27th, 2023, the 12th of Cheshvan, 5784, at her home at Hilltop Inspiration in Aurora, Colorado, where she had lived for the last year and a half with her beloved husband, Rick, of 41 years. Judy grew up in a pretty single-family home on Indiana Street, just off Wyoming, near 8 Mile in Detroit. The family business was a Jewish bakery called Goldstein's on Wyoming in a row with other Jewish merchants. Life became very complicated and challenging after Judy's father died of a heart attack in 1959. She was only 9 years old, leading to Irene's relocating herself and the two daughters to the new suburb of Southfield, followed by many years of health troubles for Irene, forcing Judy to grow up fast and endure a difficult adolescence. The family attended a conservative synagogue where Judy received a religious school education and was confirmed. Judy graduated from Southfield High School in 1967, having been moved from a group that had started school in February to be part of a more conventional class that had begun its schooling the September prior, meaning that she finished high school at age 17. Judy's initial foray into college didn't work out. She wound up working for the bulk of that first year out of high school. She then enrolled the following fall at Wayne State University, where she received a BA in primary education in 1972. After difficulty finding employment as a teacher, Judy spent a year working menial office jobs. And then in 1973, she jumped at the chance to move to Los Angeles, where both her older brother, Murray, and her mother were now living. The path to becoming a certified teacher in California was too complicated. Judy worked for a while at a private preschool and then entered the business world, working first at 20th Century Insurance and later for manufacturers Hanover Leasing, work that gave her the financial independence to rent a nice apartment in Sherman Oaks. It was at that time that she met Rick Newberger. Rick will share the details of his and Judy's story later. Continuing with this biographical sketch, the couple was married on July 18th, 1982, at Temple Aliyah in Woodland Hills, California, where Rick's Aunt Joy belonged. The couple started out in Rick's apartment in the Los Feliz neighborhood of Los Angeles, and then made their way back into the San Fernando Valley to Northridge, where they bought their first home in 1983. The couple then brought their two children into the world. Victoria Michelle, Vicky, was born in 1984. Bradley Arthur, Brad, was born in 1986. Judy stayed at home to raise the kids while Rick blazed his entrepreneurial trails, though she and Rick talked always about everything regarding his business ventures, and she supplied much needed down-to-earth grounding and common sense. In search of better schools, the family moved farther west to Agora Hills in 1988, and then in 1994 to what they called their forever home on a ridgeline in Westlake Village with a pool, palm trees, and a view to die for. Throughout the child-rearing years, Judy was active in the kids' school life and their various activities. The family attended Adat Elohim and then Temple Eitz Chaim in Thousand Oaks. Eitz Chaim is where the children celebrated becoming B'nai Mitzvah and were confirmed. After becoming empty nesters, Judy poured herself into volunteer activities such as the Senior Concerns Gift Shop in Thousand Oaks, the Newcomers Club, and the New West Symphony League. Again, Rick will share more of the particular joys that the two of them partook in throughout their many years together. The Great Recession in the late 2000s caused the collapse of Rick's business, leading to the sale of the home in 2010 and a downsizing to a townhome farther west yet again in Camarillo, from which the family based a new business that Rick and Brad had launched together the year before, providing better background music for commercial establishments. Judy worked for the family business as a music librarian for many years until her retirement in 2020, putting to use her lifelong encyclopedic love for music. In Camarillo, Rick and Judy were members of Congregation Am Hayam, where they have maintained an associate membership. Rick and Judy remained in Camarillo through the marriage of both their children, who wound up settling here in Colorado. By the time of the arrival of their third grandchild, the couple made the decision to relocate here, building a cottage at Hilltop at Inspiration in Southeast Aurora, very close to their children and grandchildren. During the couple's final decade in California, Judy endured an excruciating host of health troubles, eventually being diagnosed with COPD in 2019. Her health continued to deteriorate and took a major nosedive last December when she was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. She battled, as she did in so many ways throughout her life, in the months that followed. And through a difficult regimen of therapies, she hit a plateau in which the heart failure had subsided and the COPD was stable, providing a 4 to 5 month period in which Judy immersed herself in enjoying life as much as possible, particularly by spending joyful time with her beloved grandchildren, of which there are now 4. Those months were something of a swan song, as Judy's health declined again rapidly over the course of just a few days, leading to her death in the middle of the night, early last Friday morning. Judy's mourners are her husband of 41 years, Rick Newberger, their children, daughter Vicky Leon, joined by her husband Danny, and their children, Judy's grandchildren, Noah Daniel, age 5.5, and Emery Joy, age 2.5, who are not present here today. And Judy and Rick's son, Brad, joined by his wife, Kim. Their children, Judy's other 2 grandkids, Riley Audrey, 3.5, and Landon Shell, 15 months, are also not here today. We want to acknowledge Judy and Rick's co-grandparents, Danny's parents, Debbie and Jim Leon, and Kim's parents, Alan and Michelle Spatz, all here from the Los Angeles area. We also welcome close friends and neighbors here in Colorado, Susan and Jerry Leider. We acknowledge Judy's nephew and niece, children of her sister, Anita Abraham, Mickey Abraham, watching the live stream from Florida, and Haley Sugarman, watching from Massachusetts. Also, we note Jan Foote, the widow of Judy's brother, Murray Gould, who is viewing from Los Angeles. All of us gathered today are here to support the next of kin mourners and their families as they fulfill the mitzvah, the sacred obligation to provide a dignified burial for their wife and mother, returning Judy's body to the earth from which we all come, an act of chesed shel emet, a kindness of pure truth that cannot be repaid by the deceased and is thus performed with complete selflessness and love. So we recognize and thank everyone for coming here today to pay tribute to Judy's life and to support her mourners at this difficult time. Each one of us plays a sacred role in the mitzvah of kavod hamet, the honoring of the deceased, which we will fulfill by speaking kindly about Judy's life, her joys, her passions, her virtues and her character, her accomplishments, and her loving devotion to her family, and expressing gratitude for her presence on this earth for these 73 years. An additional way to honor Judy's memory is to make gifts in her name to Jewish Colorado's Israel Emergency Fund. We embrace the memories Judy crafted for us with relief, knowing that she died peacefully and free of suffering, and with sadness that her journey among the living and her ability to fashion new memories in the present has come to its end, yet knowing that her legacy will endure in so many ways and that her memory will be a blessing. The time of mourning is a complicated time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We continue our service with the recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Judy's life with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. From Psalm 18. Im chasid titchasad, im gvar tamim titamam. With the loyal, you deal loyally. With the blameless, blamelessly. Im navar titpara, ve'im ikesh titpatam. With the pure, you act purely, and with the perverse, you are wily. It is you who deliver lowly folk, but haughty eyes you humble. It is you who light my lamp. Adonai, my God, lights up my darkness. With you, I can rush a barrier. With my God, I can scale a wall. The way of God is perfect. The word of the eternal is pure. God is a shield to all who seek refuge. Ha'el tamim darko, imrat Adonai tzrufa, magen hu lechol hachosim bo. From Psalm 34. Lechu banim shimuli, yirat Adonai alamedchem. Come, my children, and listen carefully. You will learn what it means to have reverence for the Eternal One. Who is eager for life? Who desires years of good fortune? Guard your tongue from evil, your lips from deceitful speech. Shun evil and do good. Seek amity and pursue it. Sur merav aseh tov, bakesh shalom v'rodfehu. The 23rd Psalm, I'll recite it in English. If you know it and wish to join in, I invite you to do so. A Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsa, Bihinot deshe yarbitzeni, Al mei menuchot yenahaleni. Nafshi yeshovev, nafshi yeshovev, Yancheni v'magle tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki elech begetz al mavet lo irara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha umishantecha, Shivtecha umishantecha, Hema yenachamuni. Ta'aroch lefanai shulchan, ta'aroch lefanai shulchan, ta'aroch lefanai shulchan, neged zorerai. Dishanta vashemen roshi, Dishanta vashemen roshi, Dishanta vashemen roshi, Kosi revaya. Ach tov v'chesed, Yirdefuni kol yemei chayai, ושבתי, ושבתי בבית אדוני, ושבתי בבית אדוני, לאורך ימים. Yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da, yada da 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 da, yada da da, yada da da, yada da da, yada da da. We now come to the part of our ceremony when we get to hear direct reflections, loving memories and sentiments, eulogies of Judy from her children and her husband. We're privileged to hear from all three of Judy's mourners. We'll start with Brad.
Great. Hello, everyone. Don't even know where to begin. I have a little inside joke with the family that if anybody has been around this family, especially my dad, you know, there tends to be a allotment on speeches, and we're going to try to keep this condensed because I'm sure my dad will spend more time. That's just kind of the inside joke of how we do things, but we'll see how this goes. And I've been thinking a lot over the past few days and reflecting on my mom and how we react together and how everything's there. And I came up with 4 words that I would use to describe her. So I want to share those 4 words and kind of talk about a couple stories and memories around each of those, which I think really describes my mom in a really accurate and how she would like to be remembered. So the 4 words are the following: funny, stubborn, worried, and family. And that's pretty much ties my mom up in a whole loop. I'm going to start with funny because for those who knew, my mom had an incredible sense of humor. You had to dig for it a little bit. It wasn't an overtly out there thing, but the way she phrased things, the way she was, it was just incredible with some of those ways. So a couple stories around this, which just I think really encapsulate my mom, particularly from some of these memories growing up, which have been really fun to kind of think back on and reflect, and stories I haven't really thought about in a long time. So the first is my mom had this affinity. This is completely unintentional, but she combined words. And it came at the most inopportune times, where it was when she was trying to be the most serious or get her point across the most. It came out, it just broke the ice, and it was kind of one of our family's humor that really, really worked. So the most fond memory I have is I was probably maybe 11 or 12 years old in our house in Grand Oaks. And we lived on a hill. I liked to ride my bike and go to the very top of the hill and go there. And I wanted to go ride my bike. She looked at me dead straight in the eyes and she said, "Brad, be dark." She meant to say be home before dark. That was what she was really trying to go for there. But the 2 words together just is an example. When she was fighting, Vicky and I were fighting, she would always say something along those lines, and it just kind of broke it up. My dad calls it Judaisms. I don't think we put those together then, but it's just a little bit of an example. On that same line, she always combine, or you'll probably hear this from other people talking too. It was never Brad. It was Vicky or Brad or Bricky or some combination, or the cat's name. I'm pretty sure I've been Jasper and Callie and Sadie and really any cat's name that we had in the whole thing. And you could pretty much say any name. It would never be my name, but it would be somebody else's name that would come to the forefront in any of that one. And the last one that really recounts funny and kind of hopefully gives you a sense of my mom's personality was, I'm pretty sure this was Hawaii. I don't 100% remember where. And my mom had a love for cats, really a love for cats. And you'll hear that through here. And we were walking in a marina, walking by, and there was this sign and it said cat rentals. And she said, dead serious, "Oh my gosh, they rent cats. how amazing. Like for people on vacation, if they're homesick, you can get a cat. It was just, she was so enthralled with the idea. And of course, then I'm pretty sure it was my dad who said, Mom, it was catamarans, right? Because we're in a marina. That's really what it was. But it's just one of those stories that we tell forever in our family, because she just, again, encapsulated her sense of humor and definitely our family dynamic growing up. Stubborn. I think for anybody who knew my mom, they could understand this. My mom had a way of doing things that was always her way. Now, I, trying to be the helpful son, would always try to offer my advice or guidance, especially maybe through college in the older years of, hey, Mom, there's an app for that. Or, I can show you how to do this, right? There might be an easier way to do what you're trying to do. And that never worked. And I don't know why I kept trying, because I understood, should have really learned by that point, especially post-college, that it was just going to fall on deaf ears. If she had learned a way to do something, that was the way she was going to do it. And truly, there was no telling her there was any other way. Crossword puzzles on an app. Nope, never. I do think she finally figured out Amazon maybe just a couple years ago, and she really did get into that and enjoyed ordering things and doing that front. But if it was technology and my mom and she knew how to do it before, nope, no way. One other one that I'm sure my dad might mention, but I wanted to throw this story in. This is the most recent one. She was adamant that my dad put up the family photo wall, and everybody going back to the Shiva today, we'll get to see this. It was so to the point that I just come back from a trip, and my mom would not let me over to the house until the family wall was up. We couldn't see it half done. We couldn't see half of it. We had to wait till the entire thing was up, and I couldn't go home. Literally, just brag, you can't come. You have to wait till it's done. So we're eternally grateful for her stubbornness to be making sure my dad put it up, because it's a lovely memory that everybody gets to experience and have that. And the last one, again, just to encapsulate her personality, my mom would never call me. She never wanted to be a burden. This was a big thing, particularly in her later years. Ever. It was between her relationship with her mom and how that worked out. So in college, after college, I had to call her. And that was how it was done. She was stubborn with that, but she never wanted to feel like she was a burden on me. And, it works that way. All right. Worry. So my mom was a huge worrier. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. My dad would say, what was her job? She worried. She just endlessly worried. That's what she did. And I don't think I made that process any easier. I have a Newberger gene of travel that started when I was very young at 13. I think my dad had studied abroad when he was young in high school. I had gotten an opportunity to go on a student group trip as a kind of a present for my bar mitzvah. And that started the drug of traveling for me. And I went to Europe, and I'm sure she worried endlessly. That exasperated itself to 3 other trips through high school. And then I decided to move to New York for college. And then I decided I'd like to work on a cruise ship after college and go sailing around the world and going to countries like Tunisia or Morocco or places where I am convinced she did not want me to be attending. And I always said it was fine and it was good. And she supported me greatly, but I know she worried tremendously during that time. I'm appreciative that she got it, and I'm appreciative of that. But the worry part was a huge part of my mom's DNA. And what more story on that? This is just funny. I don't know if this 100% fits in this category, but this is just a good memory because this is funny. Growing up, there was another inside joke that my dad traveled a lot for work during that time. And inevitably, as soon as he left for a trip, one of us would get sick. It just happened. Always. And of course, she worried. We try to get my dad home and everything like that. I'm not 100% sure how this is genetic, but because I travel a lot too, whenever I leave, one of my kids gets sick. Riley gets a UTI. Landon gets RSV and goes to the hospital. I don't know how that flows through a generational tree pool, but that whole semblance has staying. And again, my mom would just worry tremendously, first about Vicky and I, and now about my grandkids whenever something would happen to us. It's what she did. It was a part of her DNA. And as much as I tried to comfort her and tell her not to, of course, I knew with the stubbornness that was going to fall on deaf ears. And finally, family. Family was everything to my mom, truly. She said her greatest accomplishment was her kids and her grandchildren. And, I truly hope how much she knows how much, love there was for all of us. And there's a couple things here that I want to touch on, but I think the biggest lesson is we reflect a lot in the past couple of days. You've heard this. My mom had a difficult relationship with her mother. Her dad died very young, and she had a very difficult relationship with her siblings and the relationship between her siblings. And if there's one legacy and something that she has passed along to us, and this might be inadvertent, I've expressed this to her. I don't know how much she knew. I think Vicky and I really took this to heart. It's really don't sweat the small things. Her brother and sister never spoke for 30 years because it's something that I think was incredibly stupid. And Vicky and I really kind of separately, but we've come together in our older years and understood that we never want to let family grudges stand in the way. There really is nothing more important than family. And whether she knew it or not, it's a huge legacy that my mom is passing along to us, that there really is. And there really should be nothing that can get in front of that relationship. Two other things on family that I think are important. My mom had a love for musicals and old movies and cats and things, and it was a huge connection to my wife, Kim. I never related on those sorts of things. And I think getting to, Kim and I have been together since we were 17. We've been in each other's lives for a very long time. And I think having that and knowing that special relationship was really moving. And one other thing that my mom was really proud of, she did this recently, 3 or 4 years ago. She did a huge genealogy project. I went home to Camarillo, and the entire kitchen table was this immense and massive family tree that she had put together. And this was the kind of person she was. She had gotten really into it and was really wanted to make sure that we knew where we had come from and where our family history was rooted and going from there. And that's one of the legacies I want to continue to pass on, make sure our kids understand that, because she put, I can't even tell you, countless hours into that. And I'm going to end on the last part, which is, with family and both my parents having 41 years of marriage. And in this day and age, that is extremely unique. And there's love and support and lessons and bonding. And they truly showed us how to raise a family, how to raise a happy family, how to not sweat the small things, how to build connections together. And it's really, the family legacy is something that, again, I don't know my mom knew she impacted us in that way, but I hope she did, because truly that's where we're taken. So these are just a few examples, trying to make this in 5 to 8 minutes, to doing my best to try to summarize my thoughts in that quick amount of time. But I hope this gives you a small glimpse into my mom's personality. You had to get to know her. She's a tough shell on the outside. And when you dig deeper, you really see how amazing of a woman she was. And through this whole process, I'm just touched and blessed by all of our friends, all of our family, all of the support from everybody here who's surprised and flown out and here to be with us, everybody on the live stream. Words truly cannot express how much love there is for my mom, for my family, for all of us here today. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank you for the support. And, I hope this gave you a little insight into my mom's personality and to really the truly amazing woman that she was.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Brad. Vicky?
Everybody see me? I'm on my tippy toes here in case nobody saw. Okay. I do not have the speech gene that my dad has, so I'm going to do my best here. So I want to thank you all for being here today to help us celebrate the life of a remarkable woman, my mom, Judy. She was a caring, loving, supportive, and loving wife, mother, grandmother, and friend. But if you were to ask her, she would brush it off and describe herself as simply ordinary. But she was anything but. Growing up, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. Having kids now myself, I am only now just realizing how challenging that could have been. And I am sure my attitude did not help some. One of the favorite things to do was when I stayed home sick from school. My mom would bring me soup, we would watch The Price is Right and other game shows, and play board games all day. I had so much fun that I may have stretched my sick time a bit longer so I didn't have to go back to school. My dad traveled a lot for business, and my mom seamlessly took care of the household, cooking and cleaning and driving me and Brad to all of our endless after-school activities. It was no wonder she couldn't wait for me to get my driver's license. As Brad mentioned, without fail, every major sickness or injury happened when my dad was out of town. Whether it was a chickenpox or broken bones, every one of those stories starts with, Dad was out of town. There was one week in particular where my mom fell in the parking lot breaking her foot and somehow drove home. I broke my wrist and Brad broke his toe. Needless to say, my dad had to return home and had a really fun time bringing his family to the same ER multiple days that week. My mom was always insistent on family time, and family dinners were especially important. We would all get the opportunity to share about our day, and I loved having that uninterrupted time to talk. Family dinners is something that I have continued with my own kids. Knowing myself and my brother now, you wouldn't know that when we were kids, we didn't get along. My mom used to tell us that one day we would love and appreciate each other, and we would laugh that off. Turns out, she was right. My brother and I now live about 5 minutes from one another by choice, and we love the bonds that our kids already share together. There may be something you don't know about my mom, which was that she was really funny. She could always be counted on to say something silly and break all the tension. She could never keep anyone's name straight, and for the longest time, my name was Bricky. To this day, Brad is still being referred to as Jasper, which was the name of one of our cats. She often referred to herself as Marm, a word she once used for the word mom. And for a period of time, she called herself Henry, a play on her middle name of Henrietta, which she absolutely despised. I have several birthday cards signed Love Marm and Dad or Love Henry and Dad. One of my best memories that I have is a time that we planned to go to a cat show up in Ventura. I am not sure what happened prior to us leaving, but all of a sudden, my mom didn't want to go. After a lot of convincing, she finally relented and said, "Fine, I'll go, but I won't have a good time." The entire drive up, she stayed quiet. As soon as she walked in and saw the first cat, who wasn't even one of the show cats, this was just one of the cats that was up for adoption, her whole face lit up and she said, "Oh, look at the kitties." And we had a really great time. One of the best things about her was her ability to laugh at herself, and I remember lots of laughter throughout my childhood. Brad and I left to go to college out of state at the same time. To make matters worse, my dad accepted a job in Atlanta, and our cat Callie died all within the same week. Our loud and happy house became quiet, and it would have been easy to wallow, but my mom decided it was time for her to go back to work. She started volunteering at a gift shop, which then turned into a job, and pretty soon she was busy 5 days a week. I remember coming home from school on a break once, and she was never home. My mom then took those skills and began working for my dad and Brad's company until her retirement in 2020. Another one of my mom's biggest accomplishments was writing a children's book called Nobody Came for Jasper, loosely based on the adoption of my cat, who eventually turned into my parents' cat. Her love of cats is something we all shared, and talking about cats or looking at cat videos was always a way to bring a smile to her face. My mom has had her fair share of health problems, physical health problems, over the last several years. I know these times were not easy for her or my dad. In the last several months, she appeared to thrive. She went out to dinners with my dad and their friends. She enjoyed spending time with her grandkids, and weekends were spent at the parks or the zoo, and we even got to take a trip down to the Great Wolf Lodge. My mom and I went to get our haircuts a couple of times, which is something we used to do when I was younger, but I haven't been able to do in recent years. It made me happy to see her starting to feel good about herself again. One of her biggest enjoyments was going to my son Noah's soccer games. Every Sunday, she was out there on the sidelines cheering him on. It was summer and it was hot, but I never once heard her complain. Last weekend was Noah's final game of the season, where his team played the championship game and they won. She may not have been feeling her best, but she was determined to be there to watch him play. My mom was a worrier, and she worried about things big, small, and in between. Once when I was 13, my parents left me alone at the house during the day so they could run to the grocery store. My mom was convinced that the window washers, who were at our house cleaning the windows, had kidnapped me. She made my dad drive home and found me in my room, completely unharmed. Her biggest worry was about parenting and feeling like she wasn't doing a good job. I truly hope she could see that this wasn't the case. My mom overcame hardships in her young life and used those experiences to shape her adult life. She had 2 really great kids, I think, and 4 amazing grandchildren. She was a homemaker for many years, and went back to the workforce after her kids were grown, which isn't the easiest thing to do. She even made her dream come true of writing and self-publishing a children's book. The later years had a lot of challenges related to her physical health, but through it all, she never lost her determination, her drive, her love for her family, and most of all, that sense of humor. My parents have been married for 41 years and has shown me what true and unconditional love is, and I strive for that in my marriage. I'm grieving for my dad, who has lost his wife and a partner, for my children, who only knew their grandmother for such a short time in their lives, and for myself and my brother and our spouses. We have all suffered such a huge loss. I am so honored to have been her daughter. She taught us what is really important in life: to love, support, and care for family. And I can only hope to instill those values in my children. Thank you all for being here and supporting us today.
Thank you so much, Vicki. And now we'll hear from Judy's beloved husband, Rick.
Thank you all for being here and for sharing this time with us. Honestly, everybody talked about how I make all these great speeches, and I don't know how to top what it is that my children said. Speaking from the heart and doing everything that can be done to try to help you understand my Judy. And I used to make speeches in front of large audiences, and I'm not going to get through this one. So just if you can't stand to see a grown man cry, change the channel. So the first thing I need to say is that what's in this box in front of you is not Judy. In fact, what's in there was her tormentor. It gave her pain from the top of her head to the bottom of her feet, pain and hurt and tremors and twitches and swelling and just every imaginable thing. She let on to me how much she hurt. I don't think she told anybody else, and certainly the doctors didn't believe it. He said this. I'll give you a test. Take a pill. She made her way through it. No, Judy is here and here and here. So let me try to tell you a little bit about her. The way I see her, the way I see her now, still here among us. I would put my glasses on, so since all these carefully crafted words actually get read. It would have been a really terrific thing to have cleaned the glasses before I started this. Handkerchief handy. So, what do I want to say? First of all, Judy was our protector. She was the mama bear. And she wasn't going to let anybody hurt her mate or her cubs. And as long as you treated them good, you were good. But if you crossed them, well, let me tell you something. These Goulds, they knew how to hold a grudge. And you were dirt, and you were dirt forever. That was what it was. That aside, though, just for that little exception, Judy was pure, unadulterated, 100% love. And all she asked in return for that love was a little bit of yours and some respect. That's it. That was not she didn't demand a high price. I truly believe that we're as one, Judy and me, that until I met her, my circle was not complete. And I was a piece of me that was missing. And until she met me through this hard life of hers, she had the same issue. Just was not, the circle wasn't done. And yet, when we met, and I'll tell you just a tiny bit how that happened, when we met, the circles were complete and we became interlocked rings, inseparable. So, how we met, one brief aside on that, because it was sort of one of those things where we just used to say, oh, we were introduced. We were introduced. That's how we got away with this. But the story was that in 1981, for different reasons, we paid $18 to the United Synagogues of Los Angeles for a questionnaire from Jewish singles. And they mailed it to us, and we filled it out painstakingly, page after page after page after page after page, mailed it in. There's no swiping or, looking at videos of people. Just weeks later, envelope arrives, very thin envelope. Opened it up, piece of paper, printout. And remember what computer printouts looked like in 1981, dot matrix printer. 6 names. Thank God, all girls' names. 6 names and phone numbers. Nothing else. Names and phone numbers. This was Jewish singles. So, and in those days, the men, they had to make the call. So the first printout, oh my gosh, 6 names, and it was an adventure. I will tell you that, an adventure. But there was no long-term relationship anywhere near there. Second printout arrives 2 months later, 6 names. I don't know if I can do this anymore. 5 names. I knew I could definitely not do this anymore. 1 name on the list. She was never home. I don't know. Didn't pick up her phone. Didn't have an answering machine. Whatever. I just said, you know what? I'm done with this. When the third printout comes, in the trash. And then one night I was kind of lonely, and I picked up the phone. I said, I call her. What the heck? Judy Gould. Called Judy Gould. A very, very sleepy lady answers the phone. What? Not hello. Just what? And we talked for an hour and a half. Made a date. Met at the Hungry Tiger a week later, and sat for 6 hours. I had intended to buy her dinner, wouldn't let me. I was going to pick her up and bring her over there. Wouldn't let me. Wouldn't tell me where she lived. Hey, men are, not good. Anyway, I had kept a diary through this whole process, and I had, next to her name in the diary, I wrote, "This is a spinster. I have finally met one. Uncrackable." 4 months later, we were engaged. 5 months after that, we were married. Not so uncrackable. Not such a spinster. Anyway, glad I did that, really. So, these 2 rings, these 2 connected rings, inseparable rings. This is us. This is us. We dreamed together. We planned it together. We built things together. We built a family. We built businesses. We built a home, this beautiful cottage. In the end, we were still dreaming, still planning, even though I know she knew that those were not going to happen together. There was another great thought in there. Well, never mind. Maybe it's someplace else. So people always ask me, okay, so long marriage, so unusual. What's the key to a long marriage? So glibly, I always answer that the secret is to listen more than you talk. Well, anybody who knows me knows that is a BS answer. Okay, that was not really how it went. But what was true in there was it was listening and talking. That was part of it. So yeah, it was. You had to. We talked about everything. You know, when we were dreaming and building and working on my business things, yeah, how close a partnership was that? She was not a sophisticated. She didn't have an MBA, or well, either did I, but she didn't have a business education or whatever. But she had a lot of common sense. And on our tax returns, and I don't know how this came about, and I don't know if it was legal. Alan, you'll have to someday explain this to me. But my occupation was entrepreneur, and hers was associate entrepreneur. I don't know what that was, but it was right because we really did things together, and it was kind of fun. So the other thing about 41 years of marriage, besides listening and actually talking to each other, which we did a lot, was you have to accommodate what your mate needs, what they desire, what they wish, if you can, try. And it's also recognizing, and my kids alluded to this, that there was no issue or aggravation so big that it was bigger than the love that we had. I don't know why I didn't say this stuff when people ask me, what's the secret to a long marriage? This is the secret to a long marriage. So I can't remember an argument. I simply can't. I sat there one night thinking, okay, what did we argue about? Oh, we argued about plenty. If we didn't argue, if we agreed on everything, it would have been an incredibly boring time together. I think I would have, died of boredom long ago. No, we had our disagreements, certainly, but nothing was more important than our love for each other. So then one more thing is honoring the spirit of the wedding vows. Now, these days, I don't know what they say when they get married. I mean, I've heard some pretty wacky wedding vows, but we were pretty traditional. We agreed to, in this deal, we agreed to love and cherish, help each other through the good times, the bad. And there were good times, and there were, frankly, some not so good times. Through periods of wealth and periods when, there wasn't really very much money at all. And Rabbi alluded to when that moment was. Through good health and through sickness. My God, did she endure sickness and bad health? She didn't deserve it. I don't think anybody deserves it. But she didn't give up, not till last Thursday night. And we loved each other unconditionally and wholeheartedly. I said, I love you every single day. And she said it back. And I say it still. And she's saying it still. We always signed our cards, love always. Now it's love always and forever. So that's where I intended to stop. But, I'm still pretty deep into technology stuff. So I asked Google Bard how long these remarks would take me to read. We may be on a schedule here. Bard gave me an interesting answer this morning, and I'm going to try to read this to you. I didn't believe that a robot could make me cry. It's happened every time. So it said it will be around 7 to 9 minutes to read out Rick's eulogy for Judy. It's based on the average reading speed of 180 to 200 words per minute. However, the actual reading time may vary depending on the speaker's speed and the flow of the eulogy. Okay. Then it goes on. The eulogy is a beautiful and moving tribute to Judy. Rick shares about their relationship, their values, and their commitment to each other. It is clear that Rick and Judy had a very special bond, and that Rick is deeply saddened by his loss. I'm sorry for your loss, Rick. I hope this eulogy helps to honor Judy's memory and to celebrate the life that she lived. I don't know, I'll have her cry. Thank you, computer. Thank you, Bard. And that's the free version. Can you imagine if I paid them? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rick. Thanks again to Brad and to Vicky for sharing so many heartfelt sentiments, deep emotions, and rich, varied stories. I'll try to add in a little bit of what wasn't shared and connect it to some other thoughts. The family told me that Judy was a simplistic cook, that her approach to food was pretty much just follow a recipe and here you go. Brad shared that he and his wife have a joke that they would have preferred having moms who did the opposite of what they did. Brad would have loved to have a mom who cooked with real attention to the flavors and the details. And he's made a point to rectify that for himself in his adulthood. So that's how Judy was. Rick shared that he had a less wedded relationship to recipes. He would use them as a guide and then kind of go his own way, but that wasn't Judy's style. But she did make him a wonderful chili every birthday. And she loved Jewish foods. She would make all of the traditional foods for the different holidays, except latkes. Rick made those. So food mattered, particularly as a vehicle for celebrating tradition, which itself was a vehicle for bringing family together, which comes back to the core values that all of Judy's mourners have shared. There's some interesting connections to this week's Torah portion, which is Vayera. We are in the book of Genesis, and we're in the middle of the story of Abraham and his wife Sarah. This week's portion begins with three angels appearing at the tent, and Abraham runs and to greet them and says, "Pray, let a little water be fetched. Then wash your feet and recline under the tree. Let me fetch some bread." So, okay, already Abraham's taken care of the water and the bread, and he's welcoming them. And then he hastens into the tent and he says to Sarah, "Make haste, 3 measures of choice flour, knead it, make bread cakes." He gives his wife a very specific recipe, says, "Make this one thing." And then Abraham runs and he gets a young ox and he has it prepared and he fetches cream and milk and the young ox and he makes a whole thing. So he took care of the bread, the water, and like the whole rest of the meal. So he was like Rick, sort of going off script and taking care of a lot of different approaches. And Sarah was like Judy with a very specific recipe that she tended to. Right at the beginning of our Torah portion. What's beautiful about it, regardless of how we might want to align, which character is like which individual from this beautiful family, is that they were working together. They cared together about being generous. Philanthropy was a major theme, a Jewish theme. that ran throughout Rick and Judy's life together. They gave back. They volunteered with their time, with their leadership, with their investment of energy and care, and with their material resources when they were able. They worked together. Abraham and Sarah worked together. They had a mission. They needed to start a family and perpetuate this people that had a special relationship with God and with the world. We heard about Judy's fascination with genealogy. She was very sensitive and attuned to the devastation that occurred to parts of her family and simply to the Jewish people through the Holocaust. She was deeply affected by the horrors that occurred earlier this month on October 7th in Israel. She cared about the Jewish people. She cared about family. And like Sarah, she did her part with food as it was available to her. I learned that Judy made a great matzo ball soup, and that the break the fast was National Cholesterol Day, with all of the common foods that appear then. We've also heard about Judy's humor, and what's fascinating in this Torah portion is that just a little bit later, during this same episode of the visitors at the tent, they share news that you see, Sarah was kind of like a spinster as well. She had been married to Abraham for a while, but the other component was that she went a very long time without conceiving, and they were still childless. So an element of being a spinster, being over the hill, not able to, fulfill those goals. But they announced to her that she's going to conceive. She was 90 at the time. What was her response to that? She laughed. She laughed at herself. It says it's ridiculous. How is someone like me going to be able to do that? She also makes a dig at her husband. He's a little too old to make that happen as well. She had a sense of humor, as we learned about Judy having one and being able to laugh at herself. The themes go deeper. Sometimes in the negation, there is deep family dysfunction in the book of Genesis. We see it. Abraham first becomes a father through Sarah's handmaid Hagar. Then Sarah conceives and gives birth to their biological son, Yitzchak. The two boys, who were 13 years apart, are playing, and Sarah doesn't like it, and she casts away the handmaid and the other son. And those two boys didn't interact for a very long time. Reminded me of some of the themes of what we learned about within Judy's family, which, as Brad shared, were lessons for how to do things differently. And Judy made good on that lesson. Sarah winds up with her son Isaac and her husband Abraham, and things still don't necessarily go so well. Abraham goes off, all in this Torah portion, by the way, to fulfill God's commandment to offer his son on the mountain as a sacrifice. An angel intervenes. God says, "You passed my test." The story continues for Abraham and Isaac, but they never talk again. At least there's no dialogue in the Torah between those two adult men. And the next thing we learn about Sarah is that she died. So There are a lot of unresolved questions about the family dynamics there. Did Sarah have doubts about her parenting? Should she have stopped Abraham from doing what he went off to do? Was it learning about what he was doing that caused her death? There are lots of unknowns. When I talked with Rick and Brad and Vicky, we talked frankly about the unknowns about Judy's outlook on her life and the limitations that she faced and the difficulty that she had making peace with them. Rick spoke about how hard life was in her body. We know that these last few months gave her an opportunity to relish her relationships and to be present with all those whom she loved. We don't know what kind of peace she made regarding all of that. We know that those who loved her assured her that she meant something deeply important to them, to her grandchildren, and that it was good enough and that her presence mattered. We can hope that that message penetrated her to some inner peace, that she lived well, that she made a deep impact on her communities, wherever she lived, and most importantly, as we've heard, on her family. So much more to share, so much that we've heard already, and many stories that I was privileged to learn about yesterday, about memories of travel, various other friendships and commitments that Judy had. Something that should not go unmentioned is Judy saw, well, first of all, she loved the music of the 1960s and the love of vinyl records and then cataloging. And then apparently one technology that she did make use of well was iTunes, and being able to curate mixes for every occasion. It seems like it was this wonderful gift that she had to find songs that spoke to the moment and that could just give the right message and right sentiment to the person she loved for whom she was making that mix, whether it was a birthday or Father's Day or one of the holidays throughout the year. She had a way of seeing how music could touch the heart. She loved the Beatles, and she saw them twice in concert in Detroit. Pretty amazing. She also loved Broadway, as was mentioned. She and Rick took a vacation to London in 1990, which was very soon after the debut of Phantom of the Opera, and they saw lots of shows on the West End, and that was her favorite. And they saw it with Michael Crawford, and then they saw it in Los Angeles when the traveling tour came. I thought about curating a little bit in the spirit of Judy's talent to express some of the sentiments that are relevant today. I asked Rick, what Beatles song should I choose? And Rick said, Yesterday. It's a sad song. It surely captured within Judy some of the uncertainty that she carried throughout her life. But at the heart of the song is a nostalgia for something that seems to have slipped through the speaker's hands, but that had been there and that the singer wishes to recapture. There's this pristine past. Yesterday, all my troubles seemed so far away. Now it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, I believe in yesterday. It's not total despair. It's a clinging to the possibility that what was can return. And I would like to believe that whatever period in Judy's life had brought her joy, and the earliest yesterdays of her youth were more troubled, and the yesterdays of her interactions within her own family of origin were troubled. So she didn't want to return to those. So maybe in some ways it was just a belief in something better that many of us carry as this knowledge of something within us that we feel like we once knew. But as her love and life with Rick grew, and their family grew, and they took cruises and enjoyed listening to music together, dancing together, watching TV together, loving being grandparents together. They constructed a whole life of yesterdays that they could continue to look back on, even if times got tough in a certain moment because of health or because of inner doubt. Something to inspire and to give hope. Love was such an easy game to play. Now I need a place to hide away. Oh, I believe in yesterday. That time when love was easy. That's what I think Judy believed in, all the good moments of her life with her family and with her friends. The singer worries, I said something wrong. Now I long for yesterday. The only thing we can say with certainty and with laughter that Judy said wrong were those goofy malapropisms that were shared about before. Yes, those were wrong, and that's why they were funny. But when it came down to it, Judy actually knew when not to talk. She would tell Rick, button it up. Don't engage in conversation unless you know that it's not going to lead to some kind of discord. She learned some best practices of how to engage with others. She didn't say anything wrong. What she knew was that love was an easy game to play, and she continued to play it while her grandchildren played with her, while they won their soccer championship and just brought their playfulness to her. And she continued to play it with her loving husband. She loved Phantom of the Opera. She wound up having a chandelier that she named Christine. There's a beautiful song in the musical. Perhaps it's Judy's ode to Rick and to all who loved her. Think of me. Think of me fondly when we've said goodbye. Remember me once in a while. Judy, you will be remembered more than once in a while. Please promise me you'll try. Yes, Judy, your mourners and all who knew you and loved you Promise. It won't even take any effort because love was such an easy game to play. When you find that once again you long to take your heart back and be free, if you ever find a moment, spare a thought for me. We never said our love was evergreen or as unchanging as the sea. Love evolves. But if you can still remember, stop and think of me. They will, Judy. They will. Think of all the things we've shared and seen. Don't think about the way things might have been. Our hope is that Judy was able to make that distinction in her own mind and heart. Think of me. Think of me waking, silent and resigned. Imagine me trying too hard to put you from my mind. Recall those days, those yesterdays. Look back on all those times. Think of the things we'll never do. There will never be a day when I won't think of you. Long ago, it seems so long ago, how young and innocent we were. She may not remember me, but I remember her. Flowers fade, the fruits of summer fade. They have their season, so do we. But please, promise me that sometimes you will think of me. Judy lives on in all the ways Rick mentioned. If there is any thought still connected to Judy in whatever lies beyond this world, it is of her beloved family. And we know that her memory is a blessing and will live on because those who loved Judy will always think of her. Yehi Zichra Baruch. May her memory be a blessing. We continue now with the El Malei Rachamim prayer as we ask for the divine source of mercy to grant eternal rest to Judy. I invite us all to rise. El Malei Rachamim Shochen Bamromi Hamse Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina B'ma'alot Kedoshim U'Tohorim Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmat Yehudit Bat Avraham V'Aida Shehalcha Le'olama B'Gan Eden Tehei Menuchata Ana Bal Harachamim Hastireha Beseter Kanafecha Le'olamim Utzror bitzror achayim et nishmata Adonai hu nachalata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen. El Malei Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Judith Newberger, who has gone to her eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our beloved Judy find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our service here at Feldman Mortuary. We will have interment at Emmanuel Cemetery, which is within Fairmount. We do have an escorted procession if you'd like to join us We'll ask you to have your headlights on and your hazards on. Everyone is parked the absolute perfect way, so thank you all for that. But if you're not going to the cemetery, if you can just give way to those who are, we in the procession are going to use the left lane heading southbound. You can use the right lane if you're not going to the cemetery. The most important request, though, is please refrain from coming forward and trying to speak with the family to express your condolences right now. We do need to load them in their family car and get on our way to the cemetery as quickly as possible. If you've been asked to be a pallbearer, we'll just ask you to start making your way to the rear of the chapel. And thank you very much for your attendance.